Sometimes I think parents are too busy driving the program because they think the more they do, and it becomes an arms race almost. I feel like, you know, Johnny over there is playing 6 times a week. Well, we're going to play 8 times a week, and he's doing that skills. Well, we're going to do that too. And then it just becomes elevated and ramped up. And pretty soon, it's just more and more and more, and it can be too much. We're adults here. Like, we should be doing the right things here, man. Like, we shouldn't be like, gaming the system to get the advantage and then making the umpire like call it back. I mean, like, the umpire's like, he's like 11 years old. Like, come on, like, let's do the right thing here. Who cares who wins? I talk to these parents, and tournaments in Chicago, tournaments in Toronto, tournaments in Las Vegas. I'm like, holy cow, like, do we really need to, like, but that's seems like the entry level to youth sports now is that you're committing these trips. And I'm like, whoa, when you're talking about hockey, like, you can go to Abbotsford and, big road trip would be Kamloops. But like, I think it's unfortunate that the expectation is that if you don't do these trips, like, and it puts families in a difficult spot. If a kid is going to reach a high level of, like, just use hockey, for example, he's going to get there regardless of what path you take. I mean, just because you're on the ice 7 days a week when he's 6 years old doesn't mean anything.
As a hockey player, Trevor Linden performed extremely well in the most high-pressure environments you can imagine, the Olympics and Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. But as a sports parent, he's about as low pressure as it gets, and the former captain is hoping more will follow his lead in that environment. Hey there, I'm Scott Rintoul, the host of Better Sports Parents. And if you're listening to or watching this podcast, you likely know that the goal is right there in the title, to help you, me, and everyone else out there become a better sports parent so that we can positively influence the youth sports environment so that all children who play have a positive youth sports experience. We do that through conversations with world-class performers from across the sports landscape, and Trevor Linden is certainly one of those. He spent 19 seasons in the National Hockey League, playing for 4 different franchises, but is most fondly remembered for his time with the Vancouver Canucks, a team he captained to the 1994 Stanley Cup Final against the New York Rangers. Trevor has been very successful off the ice as well. He's worked in hockey as the president of the Canucks at one point in time, and he's been successful outside of hockey with different business endeavors as well. But he's also lent his voice to very important initiatives, such as physical health, mental health, and intimate partner violence. Trevor is also a parent, he's a husband, and he has a keen eye on the youth sports environment today as the father of an 8-year-old. And he's here to share all of that experience with you on Better Sports Parents. Trevor, thank you very much for doing this and spending time with me here on Better Sports Parents.
Great to be with you, Scotty. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Now that I have an 8-year-old, I actually have that side of things. So I didn't have it for a long time, but so looking forward to it.
Well, and with an 8-year-old, you're right in the midst of it, and it probably brings up memories of your own childhood, but you're also in today's sporting environment, which is very different than what you would have grown up with in Medicine Hat. When I say youth sports, what comes to mind for you off the top?
I think it's twofold. I think I have my own experience in youth sports, which was the 70s in Medicine Hat, which was a different world to what it is today. Just, my son doesn't play super high level hockey, but I do have parents that do, and 7 and 8 years old. I mean, I'm shocked at the programs they're involved in. Just evolution, things change. But my love as a kid growing up in Medicine Hat was, and thankfully in Medicine Hat, the rinks froze. So I was going to the outdoor rinks. That's all I ever wanted to do was be a hockey player. So that was pretty one-track mind.
That's a very Canadiana experience that I think many of us have nostalgia about or romanticize with growing up in Canada, but it's certainly not the reality for everybody. And as you mentioned, certainly not the reality for a lot of young hockey players in urban centers today. When did you develop your love for hockey, or was it instantaneous?
Scotty, and I will say my parents weren't hockey people. They weren't sports people. So when this kid of theirs wanted to watch Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday nights. They're like, "Why does he? What's why?" So they recognized kind of that, and the greatest gift I got was my mom bought me a pair of secondhand skates at a garage sale, and I think it was for my fourth or fifth birthday, and that was my ticket to the ice, and that's what I want to do is be on the ice, and it wasn't like I was that was what my family did. My older brother didn't play hockey and my parents weren't super into sports. So it was just kind of what I wanted to do. And that's all I thought about. And I don't really have the answers for that, but it was just a love of mine for sure.
When you say my parents weren't sports people, what then was their influence on you as a child in the sporting environment?
Yeah, and I will say this, it was very, super supportive. Obviously, back then, we only played, uh, r organized hockey was 1 practice a week, maybe 1 game a week. But, they had 3 boys, so they were, as most parents are, taxing around, driving their kids to various activities. As I got into higher levels when I was, like, 11, 12 years old, I'm playing high level rep hockey now, and, um, you know, they were just supportive, like, and it was a great thing because, on the drive home, it was always great game, Trev. It was never, you coulda did this better, you shoulda did that better, you know what I mean? They were just really supportive, and there were times where it was kind of frustrating because I knew that I didn't play well, but they were like, "Oh, great game, Trev," and I'm like, "That wasn't a great game, I didn't." But it led me to be the self driver. I was driving the bus. It wasn't them pushing me to some expectation or giving me tips or you should have did this or work on that. They didn't do any of that. It was just really supportive.
Your son's father does not have a dad who is uninitiated in the game. He has the exact opposite.
Yep.
And yet, so often we are a product of the way that we were raised. Has that translated down to you, your father, your mother's attitude about youth sports? Or do you look at it a little more critically because you were a professional athlete?
Yeah, Scotty, 100%. So I'll just give you an example of my son's journey in hockey. And so I didn't need him to play hockey. I didn't want him to play hockey. He could do it. I had the attitude like, you can do whatever you want, like, just pick up, like, whatever your passion is in sport, So, when they're little, you put them in everything and see what sticks kinda thing, and so but I did have the obligation to at least expose him to skating, and so when he was 3, I put him in Learn to Skate, 4 years old, put him in Learn to Skate, and he liked that, and he played pups hockey when he was 5, is once a week, but in pups hockey, he's kinda like, "Dad, I don't really wanna play pups hockey," and I said, "Well, we've signed up from September to Christmas. We're gonna play this year or, these 3 months," and by the end of it, he was like, "Dad, I never wanna play hockey again," and everything else, and I'm like, "Okay, no problem." He says, "Dad, I just wanna ski and mountain bike." I'm like, "Awesome. So do I. Let's do that." And then the Canucks made the playoffs there a couple of years ago, and all his buddies at school were talking about Canucks hockey. So then he came home from school one day in June and said, "Dad, Christian and Connor think I'd be a good hockey player. I want to play hockey next year." I'm like, "Oh my God." So we played hockey the last couple of years, and he's had fun, not super serious about it. He enjoys it. He has fun with it, and I'm totally fine with that. I want him to be just a well-rounded kid that loves to do things. He loves to ski, he loves to mountain bike. He plays flag football. We play baseball in the summer, which I love. That's what I want to be, a baseball dad. But like he loves to play. He's interested in so many things. He's not really switched on to any particular sport, but he loves his buddies. He loves to play. So it's his choice of what he wants to do and when he wants to do it. Obviously, if we sign up for something, we're committed to it. But if the next year he doesn't want to play or he wants to change his mind, I'm totally good with that.
Was that a through line from your parents as well? Hey, if you commit to something, you see it through and then you make another choice.
100%, Scotty. If you start something, you commit something, and I remember my mom saying, like this is, like once you commit to doing something, you got to finish it. And so that year that Roman played pups hockey, he very early determined that the coach was really bossy, and he didn't like that. And I'm kind of explaining to him, well, dude, like coaches generally are bossy because they're the coaches. So he's 5 years old and thought the coach was too bossy. But I said, listen, we got to finish here. We got to, this program ends at Christmas and then you don't have to do it again. So, but yeah, definitely that was a message my mom instilled in us for sure.
Multi-sport seems to be a way that you're raising your child. Was that the way you were raised as well? Obviously, you played a lot of hockey, but I saw a big smile on your face when the word baseball was mentioned a couple of minutes
Yeah.
ago.
I mean, and back, growing up in Medicine Hat in the 70s, we didn't have, we never had flag football. We didn't have rugby. We didn't have lacrosse. We didn't have so many of the sports that, that the kids have today. So not a lot of options. I mean, for us, it was hockey in the winter and baseball in the summer. And I loved baseball as much as I loved hockey, and I wanted to be, in summer, I wanted to be a baseball player, winter, I want to be a hockey player. So it was interesting when Roman had the opportunity to play baseball. I love baseball, and I wanted to be a baseball dad. So he likes it. He doesn't love it, but yeah, I just want him to get him through little league.
Now, did you play school sports as well? Because you said you didn't have the offerings in the community that your son has the option to play. But when you were going to elementary school, junior high, did you play any other sports at that point?
I did. I played, basketball, and volleyball. Loved, the team sports. Obviously, in junior high, when I got to high school, I couldn't because I was too busy with junior hockey. But, I'm seeing that now with Roman too. Like, he's part of the swim team at school. They're a big rugby team, so hopefully he plays that. He did cross country running in the fall. He'll do track and field in the spring. So I really I love the connection of the school sports and him taking part in that. So that would be my preference. Like, I almost think sometimes as it relates to hockey, like, just a comment on, the kids these days, I mean, like, they're 6 and 7 years old and they're playing these HPL leagues and it's crazy the commitment to it. And I really want Roman to have that well-rounded experience. I want him to be able to play multiple sports and be part of the school programs and that sort of thing. So, every kid's path is different, and I certainly support. I've got lots of friends at Roman school that, their kids are totally driving the bus. Hey, they love hockey. They want to be, and so that's great. I got no problem with it. Just I always say, just as long as the kid is driving it, that's all that matters.
You spent a number of years as president of the Vancouver Canucks. So you are at the start of an athletic journey with your own son, but you see from a professional standpoint what the end product looks like for those who achieve the highest level of sport in hockey. Are you of the opinion that someone needs to specialize early because so many young hockey players are pushed that direction and yet you were evaluating at the top level of the sport, and I'm of the opinion that's not always the case, but I'd love to hear your professional point of view.
I mean, I have this belief that if a kid is going to reach a high level of like, just use hockey for example, he's going to get there regardless of what path you take. I mean, just because you're on the ice 7 days a week when he's 6 years old doesn't mean anything. The kid that was playing multiple sports from 6 to 10 and then specialized from 11, and but he's got that in him, so he's gonna, that NHL caliber skill. He's gonna get there. It's not about, you know, doing more of it. Now I know that I guess it's the Tiger Woods 10,000 hours, like that, you know, kids are specializing at 6 and 7 years old. I don't think it makes great athletes. I think playing more sports now, yes, at a certain time you have to specialize. Is that 11 years old, 10 years old, perhaps? I mean, I don't know the answer. I just know that it is such a minuscule number of people that make it to the top level of any sport. It's such a challenge. Sometimes I think parents are too busy driving the program because they think the more they do, and it becomes an arms race almost. I feel like, you know, Johnny over there is playing 6 times a week. Well, we're going to play 8 times a week, and he's doing that skills. Well, we're going to do that too. And then it just becomes elevated and ramped up. And pretty soon, it's just more and more and more, and it can be too much.
It's very clear to me that, and I do want to hear what your definition is, but it's very clear to me your definition of success for your own child isn't making professional sports or a certain scholarship or playing junior hockey. It's very clear to me early on in this conversation that's the case. But there are families out there where that is the focus. One of the things that's been interesting in the last number of years is the number of Division One coaches and in some cases professional coaches who have come out and said, look, I actually look to see if these kids played other sports because they're going to have to fit a role with our team that might not be the role they were in or that their parents see them in right now. And multi sport gives them that opportunity to adapt.
Yeah.
When you were working in this business in a professional capacity, was that a consideration that was kicked around behind closed doors?
For sure. And just one quick backstory from me. So I'm 12 years old. I'm in Medicine Hat. I've been listed by the Medicine Hat Tigers. Before the Western Hockey League draft, they had a protected list. So I was listed as a 12-year-old, which took up 2 spots of their 50 person protected list. I remember the GM, Russ Farwell, who then became on the GM, became the GM in Philadelphia. He said to me, he said, Trev, I don't want you playing hockey this summer. I want you to play baseball. And I was like, oh, okay. And so that was encouraged then. And I, as I said earlier, I do think kids that have more exposure to multiple sports make better athletes. And because I think even if like in those other sports, maybe they're not as good, but they learn because that makes them adapt and figure out how to be good. I mean, being the best hockey player, and if that's all you are, you don't see the other side of it of how you so yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, kids being well-rounded, kids having experiences that aren't always perfect is something that was definitely talked about when we were sitting in the combine room in Buffalo and at the draft and that sort of thing. Because I think it ultimately builds character. I think, you know, the book by Angela Duckworth, Grit, you know what I mean? Like, and it's hard for parents. I'm a parent. I get it. You don't want to see your kid fail. You don't want to see your kid, but how many stories have we heard about, hey, I got cut from my this team or that team, and that pushed me to become better. So those stories I think are really what shape our character, our kids character, and I think they're important to their development for sure.
You bring up a really good point that as a parent in the moment, and I'm talking about knee jerk reaction, no, you don't want to see your child fail. And yet, if you step back, I, as a parent, I know my child needs to fail in order to learn and in order to build a number of the characteristics that I want her to get out of sport and carry into life. And resilience is one of those that when you do fail, you get back up. Literally get knocked down in sports, get back up and find a way to carry on. I do think parents forget that sometimes, that part of the reason we put our kids in sports is so that they will fail in what is a relatively safe environment to do so. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and it's hard, but it's important that our kids have those, resiliency is the biggest thing, and it's important that, you know, they battle through those things, whether it be, officiating in a game or a coach that maybe, they didn't get what they wanted or whatever. So these are good lessons for our kids, and I think that's why I love amateur sport because, it is just it's fun, it teaches them lessons, Roman's hockey team last year, I don't think they won a game, and he didn't like that very much, but you know what happened in the baseball season? We won the championship, so he was like and I said, "See, you can't hey, those are things that you can't always have it the way you want it, right?" So, just, you mentioned something earlier, Scotty, just about, and, you know, parents, I think, have to recognize or have a realistic idea of what the value of sport is, what they're trying to get out of it. And so obviously, you know, I'm all for kids driving and wanting to achieve greatness in any sport, but greatness in any sport could be like I'd say to any parent, hey, if your kid can go to college or university and play a sport at that university, that is a massive win, man. Like you are like that is an awesome, awesome place to wind up. It's not, it's not about going to the Olympics or playing in the National Hockey League. I mean, that is such a tippy top of the triangle type thing that it's like and then beyond that is about learning the lessons and having fun and camaraderie and learning about teams. I mean, those are the wins that we love about sports. Like with my son, it's like find your passion, like whatever it is. I don't it doesn't have to be sport. It can be the arts, it can be drama, it can be music, like whatever that is, it's the passion that matters, and it doesn't have to be sport. It can be, there's lots of things that can drive that, but that's what for me is important for any youth sport or anything.
Well, you bring up a great point there, Trev, and it doesn't even have to be playing varsity sports at a university. I would even say something like intramurals at a university. One of the great things sport gives us is community, and it gives us this ability to adapt and find are people that we fit in with. And, one of the things I think in the future, I have no idea what my children are going to do with sport, but if they do decide to go to a different community in the world, or if they happen to attend a post secondary institution, that entry point of saying, oh, yeah, I'll play on the co ed basketball team or I'll play on the co ed soccer team because I have a foundation to do that. And now I am able to meet new people. I think it's a very underrated part of sport that people miss in those early years.
Yeah, you said it, Scotty. You hit the nail on the head. It's connection, it's community, being around like-minded people that love to play a game. I mean, it's a real fabric of our society when you think of it. I mean, like, whether it be co-ed softball or you see all these amateur sports or even these like you said it yourself. I never went to university, unfortunately, so I never saw the intramural stuff, but like even high school sports and I've it's amazing. I have buddies who I worked with at the Canucks. Their daughters are playing high level volleyball now in high school and or even on club teams and stuff. And it's just so awesome to see these young women play at a high level and have that connection and that camaraderie is just so special that, in a world where we're just filled with social media and stuff with these young people that they can just dilute it down to, hey, we love volleyball, we love getting together and practicing and playing, and that is the magic, man. I mean, that is such an important developmental phase with our kids, both male and female, and I think and so that's, I think, the goal out of this is the connection, the community, the sense of self. Yeah.
Well, and also realizing and knowing that we need to tell our kids explicitly the lessons that they're getting from sport. I think we assume they're going to get it, and some people do, but unless we verbalize that, it can easily be missed because the research is pretty clear on this. You do need to be explicit. You can get some of these life lessons from other activities, but you do need to be explicit about where it comes from. And part of the reason I think it's important, Trev, is when we talk about identity and we talk about self worth is that if we don't explain that there are other values that we are trying to derive from sport, it's very easy for kids, especially in what has become a higher pressure youth sports environment, to tie their identity to the results and to the stat sheet and to what they do as opposed to who they are. I know you're involved with mental health. This must be a big part of the conversation when it comes to athletics.
Yeah, and, like, I'm seeing this with Roman. Like, he's not a top athlete, but he did the spirit run at school, and it was a 5K race, and I think I forget the time, and he did really well, and so we did the turkey trot up in Whistler was another 5K run. So I said, "Hey, buddy, what do you say we try to take, how much time we can take off our time?" You know what I mean? And he says, "Well," and we talked about, how, the way in which we're going to accomplish this. And hey, we're going to start slow, finish strong. You know what I mean? And, like 7-year-olds go out of the gate like a shot. And so we had a better game plan up at Whistler for the 5K and the sense of accomplishment that he had when I think we took 3 minutes off our time and he was so proud of himself, and it was so cool just, and then he ended up doing cross country, this fall with the school and just to see the confidence that he built just from being part of the cross country program, as a parent was really interesting to see. It's hard to measure the value of that, as it relates to mental health, Scotty, as you said, like, uh, you know, play, playing, we talk about that connection, the community, the camaraderie. Those are things that are just instrumental for my mental health. Our mental health is just, you know, never forget through COVID, everyone was working out at home and they said, "Oh, no one's ever going to go back to a gym," and I'm like, they will, because you know what? people love to interact with other people, you know what I mean? And they wanna have that sense of community, and they wanna be together, they wanna share in the experience, and so seeing those little in my son, I just watched him at swim team practice yesterday, and I said to him, I said, "Buddy," I said, like he's doing lengths. I'm like, "Bud, like last year, going one length, you would have like been no chance, but look at how mentally tough you are that you could do all that swimming, right?" And so he's really understanding the growth he's seeing and the hard work he's putting in, that pays off. And hopefully those are lessons that he has throughout his high school years and onward.
Well, it's an interesting conversation that you bring up, that tie between physical health and mental health as well. You are literally in the business of physical health. I know you've had a number of different business endeavors post career. One of them is Club 16, Trevor Linden Fitness. How does that business align with your personal belief around sports, community, and fitness itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's many ways. I mean, I'll tell the story when I left hockey in 2008. I was really excited about life after hockey. I wanted to mountain bike and have weekends and do stuff in the winter and ski and cross country ski and do all these things. But what I didn't recognize that I would really miss and everyone, all NHL players, "Oh, I miss what happens in the locker room." And, to be honest, I didn't really miss that. But I did miss that every day my job was to go to the rink and go practice and work out and train. And, though that endorphin rush every day was like a drug. And when I retired and didn't have that, I recognized that in my mental state, and so that was a real eye opener to see just how important that was to my overall mental health, and so I had to incorporate that back into my life, and I had to find ways to do that. And then, of course, as you said, bringing that community in, getting together with other people, like going for a run, going for a hike. Like, it's not about the what, it's the who that you do it with, and getting together and having that social interaction is so important. So, and then obviously Club 16 Travel and Fitness. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's that sense of community, that sense of connection when you walk into the facility. There's that I say this, I mean, you never leave a workout feeling worse than you did when you started, because it's impossible, right? I usually work out super early in the morning. I get to the pool at 5:30 in the morning, or I get to the gym this morning at 5:30 in the morning, and you kind of get the wheels going, and by the end you leave and you're like feel like $1,000,000, right? So, but it's also too, Scotty, just I think people, as they age and as they move on through, get through, through life, they want to do more. They want to be able to do all those things with their kids and be active. And my parents are in town. Actually, funny enough, they're 82 and 83 years old, and they're working out twice a day because that's part of their mobility. That's part of their ability to continue to do the things they love to do. So, part of our mantra at Club 16 Travel and Fitness is just fitness is for everyone, whether you're 25 or 85. I mean, moving weight around, keeping your body loose, keep moving, working on your balance, staying strong is just part of what people are understanding they need to do. And so it's a mental health thing. Certainly it's a physical thing. We always think about going to the gym as, oh, I'm going to get look physically, but for me, it's above the neck, which is probably the biggest value I get.
Well, and the other thing that you did, and this isn't so we can make this an advertisement for Club 16, but you made it very clear that it was going to be affordable and accessible for everyone. Trev, you can put your name on any number of businesses, especially in the province of BC, and have it make money. But those seem to be key drivers for you. And I think that ties into youth sports today because it is getting unaffordable for a lot of families in this country, and access continues to be a challenge for a lot of families in this country. Jumpstart just posted and published the state of youth sport in 2025,
Yep.
and a third of Canadian families said, I'm stressed about the affordability.
Yeah.
25% said,
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed with the logistics of sport. How much concern do you have in that regard? I know that you're in a position where your family can access a lot of things, but
Yeah.
as a Canadian,
Yeah. Yeah.
where's your concern at?
Absolutely. And from the fitness business side of things, For sure. We want to make it accessible on many levels. Number one, the price, but number two, that you could go into our club and feel comfortable. You're welcome, whether you're 65-year-old guy just trying to get heart healthy on the treadmill. It's about fitness for all. The affordability side of things, boy, I tell you what, like I talk to these parents and I mean, tournaments in Chicago, tournaments in Toronto, tournaments in Las Vegas. I'm like, holy cow, like, do we really need to, like, but that's seems like the entry level to youth sports now is that you're committing, these trips. And I'm like, well, when you talk about hockey, like we have, like, you can go to Abbotsford and, big road trip would be Kamloops. But like, I think it's unfortunate that the expectation is that if you don't do these trips, like, and it puts families in a difficult spot for sure. And, you know, I would tell this story in my growing up in Medicine. I never got my first new pair of skates. I think I was 15 years old because, we went to secondhand stores and that's just how it was. And now you got these carbon fiber sticks that are ridiculous. Like so the barrier to entry is challenging. And even now with my son, we go to Cheapskates and get our equipment and because I explained to him, I said, hey, that's what dad did. That's what dad did, and it's amazing. This used equipment is like brand new. Like it's crazy. So I think as parents, it's definitely a challenge. I think you can certainly be creative when it comes to equipment needs, but some of the expectations around where these teams are traveling is you know, for me growing up in Medicine, Alberta, a big road trip was to Brooks, Alberta, which was an hour away. Now these teams are going to Chicago or Las Vegas for games, so yeah, and I just wonder how necessary that is.
Well, and I personally don't think it is necessary, but the sell is look, we're giving you exposure to some of the best at this age level or the best that this particular sport has to offer. And I do think there's a point where as that pyramid of sport goes up, those who rise to high performance status and eventually elite status, they will have to test themselves against the best. But I think that you can do more damage than good at some point if you are excluding people because of that access point. And I worry that we're headed that direction with certain sports. And I know how important hockey is to Canadians. I worry that we are creating a barrier of entry that is going to have people turn away before they even consider it, despite what it means to the Canadian experience, Trev.
And Scotty, that's okay. Like I totally get high performance but like high performance for me is not 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds and you know what I mean? That is not high performance. These are, this is about having, and like I've heard the stories. I mean, I got a buddy who tells me about his 8-year-old and the team and they're watching video of the other team and they're breaking down video of their own team. I'm like, they're 8. Are you kidding me? Like, for 8-year-olds should be like, "Hey, there's the puck. Go get it, pass to your buddies, and go score." That's what you're trying to do, and have fun. We're not teaching positions and teaching structure and defensive positioning. Like, this is we've lost the plot. And even my buddy whose kid's on the team is of that mind. I mean, we're not teaching, the 1-2-2 Pat Quinn structured in the neutral zone. Like we should be teaching skills and going out there and having fun and making mistakes but it's unfortunately it's about winning and it's just too much too young. And so because I think you're gonna have that attrition as you move up the path, you know what I mean? As you get higher level. I mean, that's normal. But 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 should be, more about just access and fun.
Well, you raise a concern that many people have felt, and I think a lot of parents out there understand, which is pressure in youth sports right now. You're just entering into that. First of all, I'll start just from the standpoint of people know who you are within the context of hockey. Have you ever felt any pressure in the arena because of that or seeing your kid on the ice and having people look at you in that regard?
Yeah, no, I mean, actually, it's probably the opposite. Roman is having fun. He likes to play, but he's not super serious. The parents, we have a very relaxed team. We're just playing fun hockey. And I, you know, I like to joke around with the other parents, and so yeah, I mean, I'm not in the high performance area. So, and even like I coach with baseball, and Roman likes to play, but I know it's not his. He could play anything. So I just like see him having fun with his buddies. That's all. I mean, I have no expectation for him, and I haven't sensed, especially in the hockey. I mean, the parents all ask me, "Don't you should be coaching the team." I'm like, "Not a chance, man." Like, the coaches are awesome. I'm just there to support. I guess, Scotty, I don't take myself that seriously. Like I loved what I did. I was lucky enough to be a hockey player for 20 years, and that was amazing. But you know, I'm just a dad now. I'm just a dad, and you know, someone that's watching my boy play hockey and have fun, and he's by far not the best player on the team, but I love when he almost scores a goal, and that gets me excited, and so, for me, Scotty, I love to like I want to teach Roman about the things, lots of things in life, whether it be camping and fishing and backpacking, and we did a sea kayak trip, and like I want him to experience the world that it's yeah, his dad was a hockey player, but you know, that doesn't matter in the whole scheme of things. There's so many cool things out there. So, yeah, I mean, the world's a big place, man, and you know, the world doesn't revolve around hockey. I was really, really thankful to do what I did for that long, and I love to see Romans. He's got a couple little buddies that are playing in the HPL, and that's really cool, and they love it, and they, I'll never forget the one day Roman came home and said, "Dad," he said, "my buddies at school said that you checked someone through the glass. Is that true?" And I said, and he said, "But Dad, why did you do that?" And I said, "Well, it was by accident, but that did happen after you." So we watched it on YouTube. He's like, "Whoa, Dad, that's really cool." So, anyways, he hears some stories from his buddies at school, but I don't, like I said, I don't take myself that seriously, and I think that in turn, the other parents on the teams we're involved in, see that. So yeah. So it's been kinda cool. It's been very fun.
I think coaching your own kid is a very relatable experience for a lot of people who are watching and listening. And I myself have gone through that. Should I? Shouldn't I? You chose to do it in baseball. You chose not to do it in hockey. How did you make that decision? And as a coach, what's your approach with both your son and all of the other kids?
Yeah, I mean, so, full transparency, I don't have any skates, so I couldn't be the coach of the hockey team. So, yes, that was one job I did not want. I'm only the assistant coach of the baseball team. So, for the first few years, I was in charge of snacks and, keeping them from climbing up the backstop. So that was my job. It's elevated a little bit more now, but, yeah, no, I love just being in support. Being at the baseball diamond for me, Scotty, is that I love. I love, those nice spring days when you're at the diamond, and, the boys now getting pretty good, relatively speaking. Yeah, so it's just really cool.
Have you had any parent interactions that are on the negative side, or has it all been on the positive side of the ledger?
You know what? Yeah, I mean, like, there's been a few examples, like, generally very positive. I love having interaction with the other parents, but, like, you always get the coach on the other team trying to stretch the rules or whatever, and then saying, "Well, like, well, the umpire can make the call," and I'm like, "Dude, like, we're adults here. Like, we should be doing the right things here, man. Like, we shouldn't be like, gaming the system to get the advantage, and then making the umpire like call it back. I mean, like, the umpire's like he's like 11 years old. Like, come on, like, let's do the right thing here. Who cares who wins? Like, just let's. So, anyways, there. I mean, you always run across, unfortunately, the parent or the coach that takes things just too seriously, and at the end of the day, the plot can be lost a little bit. But that happens. Hey, that happens everywhere in any sport. But generally speaking, it's been super fun. Because at the end of the day, we're just dads out there, moms and dads out there, doing something, we hope our kids love to do.
So the situation you just described is one that I think a lot of parents have probably found themselves in, and most parents have done a very similar thing. They shake their head, they don't like the behavior they see from the other parent or the coach, but they talk about it amongst themselves and they kind of move on. Your former teammate actually in a recent episode just came on and Brendan Morrison's the guy I'm talking about, and he said, I finally said something last year, and he was talking about guys who were getting on a young referee at a hockey game, and he spoke up. Do you have any advice for parents out there or coaches out there who find themselves in that situation, Trev, and they know it's not the right thing, and they're not quite sure what to do to de-escalate the situation, but also send the message that this is not okay?
Yeah, I mean, I have a real soft spot for the referees and umpires. I mean, they're just kids, right? And I always try to, you know, give them a pat on the back, and that was one of my conversations with another coach. I said, like, but you're kind of like gaming the system, and you're saying if the umpire doesn't say anything, I'm like, but he's 11. Like, why are we trying? Like, we should be supporting him and trying to like follow the rules so he doesn't have to like, Anyways, yeah, I do think that parents who, because I think ultimately peer pressure, right? Like the more people that are kind of like, hey, you know what? Referees make mistakes in the National Hockey League. Referees make mistakes at the atom level. I mean, that's part of the sport, and that's something we need to teach our kids is that, like it's an imperfect science, referees, umpires, judges. I mean, they're going to have bad days and off days and missed calls. And sometimes it sucks, but that's part of the game. I mean, it's never going to change. It's been like that for 100 years and it's never going to change. And, I think the majority of parents get it, but unfortunately it takes the odd one or two that can make some uncomfortable situations out there. And, you know, Brendan Morrison, one of my favorite dudes ever, pretty laid back guy. I could definitely see that situation happening for sure.
Well, you bring up something that's really important, and that's modeling. And your parents weren't sports people per se, but their modeling obviously had an effect on you. I think that's one of the things parents miss is that out of emotional investment and love for their kid, when they react in the stands over the top, they lose a little bit of control of their emotions. I don't think they realize what that does to their child and what it says to their child about what is acceptable behavior. How did your parents model that in your upbringing, whether it was just on the day to day or in the sports environment?
Yeah, I think that, I think it was consistent. So if it was a situation at school where I got in trouble, it was always like, hey, the teacher's in the right. Trev, you got to take responsibility for that. Whether it be, if a coach, if I ran across a coach that I had trouble with, hey, you got to sort that out. You got to make that work. It's not, don't always blame the coach. Don't always blame the teacher. Don't blame the referees. Like that's what happens. Like, but I think parents don't want to see their kids be upset or so then it's like, oh no, it's the teacher's fault. It's the coach's fault. The referees were no good, like, so my parents were very much that way in that. And I think at the end of the day, my dad is probably the most unathletic person ever. My mom not sports minded. Um, uh,
Hold on a second. They're lifting at 82 and 83
they
years
are
old.
now.
They are
Yeah,
athletic.
exactly. They sure are now. But I mean, I think the model that I saw every day, Scotty, had nothing to do with sport. It had to do with life. Hardworking, doing things right, being honest, determined. My mom made it happen for all three of us kids with on a tight budget. So that's the modeling that's important. I mean, because at the end of the day, the kid's got to drive the bus. Like, if that 6 o'clock practice is there and you got to wake them up and you got to, get them out the door and, push them to, well, then it's probably not right. I say to Roman, I said, listen, hey, your practice starts, and we got to get there. And, like if this isn't something you want to do, then we don't have to do this. Like we'll finish the year out. We don't have to play anymore, but like you have to decide. So yeah, I think it's just that modeling that, you know, not everything is going to go your ways, your kid's way, whether it be at school, whether it be on the sports field, whether it be from an officiating standpoint, and to have them recognize that that's sometimes just life. That's how it goes in sports. That's how it goes in life.
Well, and part of that, Trev, is about instilling the values we want our kids to get in life, not just through sport, but there's a relatively famous story out there, probably among those who remember when you were getting drafted. But I'd love for you to tell it for those who haven't heard it, because it's really an example to me of the values that your family had instilled in you growing up and what was most important in life. And it certainly wasn't sport. And that's when you said, I'm not sure I can make it to my pre draft interview with the Vancouver Canucks, who were picking second overall back in 1988.
Brian Burke's favorite story. He's so good at telling it. I should get him to tell it. But no, is like so. Yeah, I mean, so I was my mom was from a farm, and our family farm. We had the branding was usually the first weekend in June, first Saturday, Sunday in June, and so the Canucks had called and asked me to come out to meet Pat Quinn and Bob McCammond and the Griffiths family, and so and it was kinda like, right, like, I said, "Well, hey, could I come, like, on Monday, Tuesday, because Saturday, Sundays are branding?" And I remember talking to Brian Burke, and I was like, "Mr. Burke, like, I got" he goes, "Well, tell me what you do." He says, "Well, my job is to go into the herd of the calves and grab them by the back leg, pull them out, and then we throw them down, we hold them, we brand them, we castrate them, we ear tag them, inoculate them, and then we let them go, and then we do it all again." And he says, "So you're actually grabbing these calves and throwing them down and holding them while they get branded?" He goes, I said, "Yeah, that's what we do." He goes, "Damn right. So you can come here whenever you want." So that sort of thing. But I mean, I watched my mom and dad work their butts off and do the right thing and have resiliency, and those are the things that I think probably rubbed off on me the most. That had a big impact on my hockey career too. That's like I often say, like, I wasn't the most I had a high I had a good skill level, don't get me wrong, but what I really had was the ability to apply that skill, was to figure out a way to get the most out of it. I can't tell you how many guys I saw, tons of skill, you know, but they didn't have the ability to apply it, and didn't maximize their level of skill. I was the opposite. I got the most out of what I had, and so I mean, those were kind of gifts that I learned from my parents, and that had nothing to do with sports.
Well, it's interesting as we apply it to sports, and I know that working on a farm really doesn't have anything to do with hockey IQ or sports IQ in general. But as you bring that up and the high skill level that we see in today's young athletes, many of the guests who have come on and joined me in conversation on Better Sports Parents have commented on that we've never seen more highly skilled athletes in whatever sport we're talking about. And yet there's a recognition that the sport IQ, and in this case, hockey IQ, is perhaps lagging a little bit behind because there's been so much focus on individual work. Did you notice that? Do you notice that in today's youth sport environment?
That's an interesting theme because you think about, like, the individual work and the camps and the skill development that's out there now. I mean, you've got these incredible teaching tools and yes, I believe it's like, I don't like, I'll speak for hockey. The game is as great as it's ever been. I mean, the skill level is next level. I often say, if I came in the game today with my skill level that I had in 1988, boy, I don't know, man. I might crack the lineup somewhere. And I think, to your point, Scotty, earlier in our discussion, it was the specialization at such a young age that, that I believe that IQ, that sports IQ, if you will, gets developed through doing other things. So that one-dimensional thought process and, like, yeah, it builds great skill, but does it build the mind into a sports mind or a hockey mind, or do they think the game well? And I think that, obviously, when we were with the Canucks and, on the management side of things, like, talk about a player's hockey IQ, well, guy can skate and handle a puck and shoot, but cannot think the game, man. And so you see that a lot. I mean, probably more now than you did before. And maybe that's because of the way in which we're, young players are getting to where they get to.
Well, I think the other part of that, Trev, with that early specialization comes into the injuries that we're seeing. And we're seeing a way higher rate of what I would call serious injuries that we used to see in their 20s among professional athletes. And now we're seeing them in the teens or even earlier. There's been some reporting on baseball that's come out with arm injuries with pitchers because they're throwing too much. I think we're seeing this in all sports because that specialization is leading to so much time on ice that you're only doing this repetitive pattern over and over again. Your muscles aren't getting a break, and muscles around and tendons and ligaments around those muscles aren't getting the proper development that perhaps they should. It does feel to me like there's a lag between the professional level where we understand how important recovery is, and that high performance college level we understand where recovery is, and the youth level, it feels like that's lost on a lot of people. Would you agree?
Yeah, no question. I mean, there comes a lot of issues with, just the amount of time and training that these kids are doing. I mean, and, like, with gymnastics, right? I mean, I have a niece that was like, I could not believe the amount of time per week. Like, and I just like, this is not healthy. This is not, and, certainly hockey is gravitating that way. I mean, I think at a certain age, whether it be 12, 13, that it's okay, but it's starting at such a young age now, and that's the concern, no question. I mean, yeah, kids are elastic, we know that. They've got, but to a point.
Yeah, to a point. And I think it's probably the pressure around that you referenced earlier that, well, so and so is doing extra.
Yeah,
If I don't do extra, if my child doesn't do
falling
extra,
behind.
he or she will be left behind. It's the FOMO.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the arms race, and I think that's a lot of the parents. It's so competitive that, my son, if he doesn't do that, he's gonna fall behind, and it happens everywhere. It's not just in sports, it's in scholastics as well, right? And so, it's the parent that's the strong-minded one that says, "No, this is right for my son or daughter." And they can be different for different kids, but I know for my son, like, we have really deprogrammed him. Like, I meant like he's doing less stuff now, and it's better for him. It's less is more, more unstructured time, is something that we really value, and he likes it too. He likes, and so, I think that's one of the things why he's not really cut up, because he likes to play the games, just like doesn't like to practice. So, and that's okay. I mean, he's 8, and so I get that. He wants freedom to play.
I was at an event this past weekend, and it reminds me of something you said earlier in this conversation. And one of the slides that came up at the event was every kid deserves a good coach. And I think we would all agree with that statement. And yet we see that whether it's in the States or in Canada, a lot of coaches are leaving. And a lot of that has to do with parent coach interaction as well. That's the number one statistic that gets cited. Hey, I just can't deal with the parents around the kids. I'd love to do it, but I'm out. You said earlier in this conversation, I'm not coaching hockey. I think my kids got great coaches. What makes a great coach at the youth level in your mind?
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I mean, the level, that we're playing at right now is we don't have. I think that when you get to higher levels, the coach, and apparently now, I mean, a lot of the coaches, high level hockey are paid coaches, but I love Roman's hockey coaches. They are awesome. And the little girl on our Roman's team, Zoe, it's her dad, and Jordan, they're just awesome, and they're just having fun. And I love, it is such a gift for me just to see the passion they have and the fun they have, and it's great. But like, the parent involvement, with coaches is the number one. Like, I can't imagine. It's so bad. I mean, and that gets back to, hey, like, my son should be playing more. Why isn't he playing more? And it's like those are like that never happened in my world back in, it was like, no, no, you get what you earn. You get what you earn. I'm not gonna tell you, yeah, you deserve more. I'm gonna talk to the coach about it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you talk about, you know, entitlement and kids and, learning to have to work for things, like, that's part of it, and so sometimes I could see that as being a coach. I mean, it could be very, very unfun when you have a group of parents that aren't, and I think the reverse is the fair too. When you've got a great group of parents, it can be awesome too.
Well, and we need good coaches. We know how impressionable youth are, and we know what influence a coach can have, positively or negatively, on somebody's life because of how much time they're together and what they can do to their identity, their self-worth, how they can build their confidence in positive examples. You mentioned Pat Quinn earlier. I'm not sure if there's a youth coach that stands out as well, but what we're those through lines that made those coaches great and very influential in a positive manner in your life?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, Pat Quinn, obviously well known. I mean, Pat was a great man because he cared about his players, and I think that, this extends beyond coaches. It extends to leadership. When you lead with your heart, I think you connect with people, and you're able to have those tough conversations because people know that you care. You care about them first and foremost, and that, I think, that was the magic of Pat Quinn. For me, yeah, I mean, I was just at home this summer for a golf tournament, and I got to see a couple of my coaches that I had, influential people. And boy, I tell you what, like as a young kid, trying to, with a dream, and the amount that I got from these volunteer coaches was amazing. That support, the guidance, the teachings. You forget how impressionable young kids are, and how important that steady hand is. And boy, I was so fortunate to have, and for me, I didn't have, like, my parents were not hockey people, so they didn't give me guidance. And actually, that was the best part, is so I was a sponge when it came to these coaches, asking questions and learning. And so that was, yeah, I was so grateful for their contribution, for sure.
Well, we often think about what sporting lessons they can teach, but as we know, as you said earlier, very few people get to that top of the pyramid in any sport. So, really, it's how we're shaping our community members, how we're shaping future doctors, firemen, you name it. That, to a certain extent, falls to coaches. They have that much influence in many cases. And I do want to transition here because of the impressionable nature of youth and the influence that a coach can have. And you decided to be part of a campaign to bring awareness to intimate partner violence. That is not the kind of topic that has traditionally been talked about in dressing rooms or in locker rooms where there are malleable young athletes. But in my opinion, that is exactly the kind of topic that should be brought up and spoken about in a healthy manner. Why did you decide to lend your voice to that campaign, Trev?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, Scotty. They're gonna kind of relaunch that campaign this spring. Actually, it was a few years ago that I did that, and that was for the YWCA. Actually, I think that I wanted my son to realize that this was an important issue. I wanted my son to understand the respect that he needs to have for women, and that this is a although we live in Canada, which has so many great things about it, this happens in our country. And, is a very, very serious conversation. And I think the biggest compliment I got from people, Scotty, was that, uh, you know, people I know with older kids or older teenagers, it was a conversation starter. Like, "Hey, did you see that? Did you see Trevor Linden? Did you see what that ad?" And the teenage boy was like, "Yeah, that was," you know what I mean? So it started the conversation. It was the opener. It was opening the door for a parent to have that conversation with their 17 or 18-year-old son about, you know, intimate partner violence, crossing the line. And so it was an opportunity for me to leverage kind of my life in hockey, and, to lend a voice to a very important topic that is not fun to talk about. And it's not something that people really want to talk about. But it was, so yeah, it was something that I'm really proud of, for sure.
Well, and it's something that because of the nature of it, it just doesn't get talked about. And there is an assumption, I think, from many good people that, well, they understand the right thing to do. They understand what's wrong. In many cases, young people do not, unless we are very clear about that. And you used your position of influence to help. And I think coaches and parents, I certainly don't want to absolve parents. These are conversations that need to happen in households as well. But I do want coaches to realize the power they have to do exactly what you did, which is start these conversations and open the line of dialogue so that these conversations occur, Trev.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that you can extend that to, coaches are so important to our kids' lives, teachers as well. I think at the end of the day, the responsibility comes down to what happens in the house. So that's why, I mean, my involvement was really about, and it was cool to hear some of the comments I got back, just that it was the opportunity to have those conversations. And I think that sometimes all you need is the door to be opened a little bit to kind of have those conversations. And hopefully I was able to do that.
Well, very well done. I applaud you for doing it. And I'm glad to hear that you've had so many compliments and that the awareness has been created and it's gone further than it certainly would have before. I often end with this question, and it's not an easy one. There's no easy segue out of what we were just talking about, but I want to bring it back to youth sports and the issues around it. When you look at the youth sports landscape today, Trevor, what do you see as the most pressing issue that we have to deal with in youth sports?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, Scotty. What you said is just the affordability side of things, the access. Even like some of the teams that aren't even travel rep teams are got these travel trips and stuff, and I guess it's fun, but it's also puts a lot of pressure on parents. And at the end of the day, you know, kids don't play street hockey anymore, but like playing street hockey out in the cul-de-sac that's youth sports, man. Like that is the essence of what it's about. I mean, getting a group of kids together and playing soccer on a field like that is what it's about. So I think that unfortunately, our expectation on what youth sports needs to be, quote, youth sports, just needs to be dialed back a little bit. And at the end of the day, it's just creating an opportunity for these kids to go and play and have fun and connect and find a passion. And so there's so much good to it, but it's good just at the foundational piece of it. We're getting so much out there that it's sometimes when you dial it all down, when you dilute it all down, boil it all down, it's just kids playing a game and having fun doing it. That's all.
Well, when you say affordability and access, because I get asked about this too with the work I've been doing here with this podcast and the people I've been having conversations with, people say, well, what's the solution? There's no easy one, but I think it starts with bringing many of the sports and activities back into schools and community centers because those are places that everybody can access. I know there's a lot of complications around that, but I think that has to be the foundation and get a little bit further away from what has become the over privatization and professionalization of youth sports.
Yeah. And Scotty, like I gotta say, like I talk to people all the time and people come up to me and talk about, and there's no bigger gut punch when I hear a mom or a dad say, like, yeah, he doesn't play, we can't afford to play hockey. I mean, that is hard. Like that really sucks to hear that. It shouldn't be that. Having said that, like, hear parents talking about the equipment, and I always say, hey, equipment, hey, secondhand stores all day long, man. Like, I bought my kid the brand new pair of skates for $25. It was awesome, and he loves them, and he's had them for 2 years. So, but it's the fees, it's the travel, it's this, it's that. So it can be a barrier, right? And so, at the end of the day, like you hope, I think every parent has the obligation to give their child access to a sport. Maybe there's a less expensive opportunity out there. So, but that is hard to hear because every kid should have a chance to play.
I agree with you. And I'll tell you one of the other stats, just we'll close on this. One of the other stats that blew my mind from that Jumpstart State of Youth Sports in 2025 report that came out was for the almost 6,000 parents and caregivers who answered, there were 3 and 4 of them that did not know about financial assistance in instances where a kid was unable to afford or a family was unable to afford a sport. So they didn't know about Jumpstart. They didn't know about KidSport or Athletics for Kids or any of the great organizations we have across this country. We have to create further awareness
Yeah,
while we're trying to bring the affordability back to where it
yeah,
should be. In the interim, we have to let people know where these resources are.
yeah. And I, like that. That's the thing, Scott. Like, I mean, we live in one of the greatest countries in the world, and who we have. I've just spent 2 weeks in South America over Christmas, and that's one of the things I want Roman to understand is that, like, dude, like, you were born in Canada. We should all be thankful for that with what we have. But to your point, like we have the ability, and there are the groups out there that can support these families in helping them their kids. It just I guess it's the awareness of these programs that can make a difference.
Very well said, as was this entire conversation. Trev, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know how much you care about sports and specifically youth sports. So thank you very much. I think you're going to help a lot of families and parents out there.
Good to be with you, Scotty. Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and you found some tangible takeaways that you can bring with you in your journey to becoming a better sports parent. The best way for you to support this podcast is for you to subscribe, follow, rate, review, and drop us a comment on whichever platform you're watching or listening. And the fastest way for us to grow this podcast and reach more parents out there is for you to share it with your respective networks and to tell people that you see at your youth sporting events when you're there with your children. Big thanks to Lightstock Music and Andre Diaconou for the music on this podcast, which is a production of Toolkit Content. Until next time, happy sports parenting. And remember, have fun out there. That's what it's supposed to be about.